Okay, hello everyone. My name is Jozef, and I am from Slido. Sorry. Okay. So first, a little bit about me. I've been with Slido for almost 6 years now, and over the time there, I was lucky enough to come across basically the whole stack there and work with many amazing colleagues of us. And currently, I'm leading the team that takes care of our integrations of Slido with various meeting integration platforms, meeting integrations on video platforms. Sorry. And what is Slido? Well, besides the QR code there and the app that you can give some questions, and it's audience interaction platform. And over the past years, we grew quite a lot. And even before I started working here, I was like, okay, it's complete, it's quite simple. What are you guys doing there? But it turns out there are many interesting problems there. And I checked today, and we currently have like 126 repositories with various projects and small parts of our system. So there's quite a lot to do. And there's quite a lot to work on in terms of infrastructure. We have quite a lot of data and great data team that makes great things with the data, and we can learn a lot from it. And yeah, it goes from infrastructure through backend to frontend, and all the problems there like scalability, performance, maintainability, and yeah, the front-end scalability, which I want to talk a bit about today. So let's go first a little bit over how Slido evolved. So Slido started as a hackathon project, and basically the first version was only a form you could vote in and give some feedback. Then it grew. We introduced new interactions, we introduced Q&A, so we needed some host mode interface to take care of all of this, some participant interface, so people can actually vote. Next on the line came some integrations. The first ones were with presentation software. Then we created some integrations with video conferencing software and so on. And yeah, the number of client apps kept growing. And also the number of teams kept growing that was working on it. And what was the developer experience here? By the way, sorry, is it okay with the sound? It kind of feels weird here. Okay. So what was the developer experience? Each client app that we had basically had its own repository, which is basically common sense. Everybody does it, and why would you do else? But we came to a point where we wanted to share some of the code between the apps, share some UI components, because we wanted to have the same experience throughout our portfolio of apps. Yes, you can do it with some libraries and some code sharing techniques, but it would be much easier if front-end apps would be, for example, placed together, maybe in one repository. Each client app and each repository had its own set of deployment configurations. So each team was kind of reinventing the wheel here and inspiring each other. Sometimes there were some improvements that were done in one repository, but almost for sure they were not done in the others because there was a different team that took care of that. Also, the CI/CD pipelines. Basically, they were doing the same thing, but had to be re-implemented everywhere. So there was a lot of scaffolding done repeatedly. And yeah, one thing connected to this, like connected to developer experience, each client app that we have was used to be you want to test it on staging. So you want to deploy it somewhere, and the setup we had was basically static. For every new environment that we needed to work with DevOps team to create a new environment for each app. So there came this idea. What if we had one repository that would take all the projects? And the colleagues that started working with this idea were kind of pioneers, as this idea wasn't at first taken well. And even when I look into the past to the experience that we had with it, it was kind of clunky. And it took a lot of time to iron out some details and to make the developer experience and developer life good, because at first it was worse than before. But after lots of rounds of feedback and lots of great work, we came to a state where we have one front-end monorepo, and how it helps the developer experience now. So we have one monorepo that has all or almost all the client-facing front-end apps. It's powered by this tool called Anix. And there are shared pipelines in the repository. So basically, since all the client apps need to do the same thing to be deployed somewhere, we can share all of this. There was a lot of configuration everywhere, so now it's shared and it's done only once. And what is the best thing about this? We have a dedicated team that takes care of all of this and constantly is improving the tooling and the state of the monorepo. So if some pipeline gets laggy and it is blocking our deployments, this team is here to help us. And one of the initiatives, as I mentioned, the static deployments before, one of the initiatives that they worked on is branch-based deployment. So basically now we have unlimited environments for every developer. So if you want to test something, you just deploy it via this branch-based setup, and you can test it in staging environment. So the first lesson would be that investing in developer experience actually can go a long way. And it can bring a lot of value to the team. So how many client apps does Slido have? I mean, a lot. And there's host mode on web, where you can configure your event. Then we came up many years ago with this switcher integration, which was meant for people presenting before we had any presentation integrations, so they can actually control Slido from their computer with some key bindings. Then we came up with Google Slides integration, which was like the first sidebar that we built besides the first host mode, and it had new implementation of the core features. From this came a PowerPoint integration, which reused much of the code. Then we wanted to create first integration with some video conferencing platform, which was Microsoft Teams. So the first version was built as an iframe embed of the host app that we had. After that, we were acquired by Cisco. And obviously, the most important initiative was to build WebEx integration, which is their video conferencing platform. So for this, we first did some prototype with the iframe embed, but then we decided that we want to try out some new architecture approach towards developing frontend. And again, we re-implemented the core features. And by core features, I mean the polling and Q&A that admin has, all the logic around it, and all the nuances that there are. And this meant that every new thing in some of the interactions had to be re-implemented many times. And then we added a few more integrations. So how many implementations of a thing is enough? Not one, not two, we had 3. And yeah, it's not good. And it has many drawbacks. Some of them are obvious. And yeah, when you have multiple implementations of one thing, then it's really hard to maintain. It's hard to introduce new features. It's hard to improve because you have to keep track of what you have where. And at this point, like each implementation was slightly in a different stack. So when someone was creating a new feature in the interactions, there was a lot of context switching. And yeah, some parts of the features didn't even make it everywhere. And it was basically an overload of responsibilities for the team. Because you not only needed to master your domain, for example, we as the integrations team should mostly focus on how to integrate into various platforms, how to overcome all the issues that we can have with SDKs, etc. And we shouldn't focus on building yet another Q&A or polling. And yeah, there was a high chance of getting the context rusty because when you worked on something new in the polling, for example, and then had to switch to some integration-specific things, for example, in WebEx, and then come back to the core features, it didn't make a lot of good. So, what is the way out of this? We decided that actually we should have one team that takes care of the core features. One team that has the domain expertise, that owns it, that can support us. And other teams, they should focus on their area of expertise. So, as I already mentioned, the integrations team, they should focus on integrating and solving the issues that come up there. So, the second lesson is for us specifically that not every team has to be expert in the core features of your product because we can do better. And how we approach this? We created a bunch of shared, what we call shared domain libraries. So we identified like what domains do we have. We have some polling engine. We have some Q&A engine. Then we have a library that takes care of the events management. So when you come to Slido, you need to select an event that you want to work with. So that's another domain. All of these parts, they should share the UI. So the product is nice, and it looks the same for everyone. So we have a shared UI library. And then there are also some supporting services, like we want to track telemetry, we want to have monitoring of errors and the apps, and a few service-like things like this. So we have monorepo that can house all of these things. We have them divided, and now we want to somehow combine them. So, as I was mentioning, that with acquisition, we created the new WebEx integration, and the new approach that we tried I will talk a little bit more about the architecture, but in there, it was like there was some host application, for example, WebEx. Then the layer, like there's a host application that takes care of integrating of Slido with the platform. Then we have some meeting sidebar component, which is basically a collection of the domains and glues them somehow together. So we have events domain available, so we can select something, and we have the polls and Q&A domain. And also we need monitoring there. We need some tracking, we need internationalization, we need to share configuration. And all of this was okay in WebEx, since it was a fresh new app, but we wanted to reuse it. We wanted to reuse it in the old host mode app, which is built in Angular. We have this presentation sidebar, which was built before WebEx and was built differently. And we have the WebEx or meeting integration sidebar. And they should all use the same implementation, which are some libraries in monorepo. Now, how to approach it? We are thinking about a few things. First option would be iframes, as we did in another instances. So basically, we would include the code or the component as an iframe, and it would live there. It would be the easiest, but it has its drawbacks. Then we considered doing like a runtime module import, which we actually use for one of our products, but it has the drawback that you always download all the dependencies. So, for example, if the domain libraries that I was mentioning all depend on React, we would have 3 copies of React downloaded. We considered also sharing it as Annex library. Annex is the tool that takes care of the monorepo, so basically a library in the repository that is shared among the projects that are living there. And we considered also module federation as an approach. In the end, we chose combination of the last two. As I was mentioning, the sidebar and the meeting sidebar and the presentation sidebar in the integrations, they were built differently, but we could iterate towards making them similar enough so we can basically import the libraries and have them already compiled in the code. But with the host mode, the former one in web, we had this issue of it being an Angular app, and these components were basically, or are basically, it's most of, I would even call it TypeScript code with very minimal React layer as UI on top of that. So we needed to solve this compatibility issue. And module federation turned out to be quite a good approach in this case. We had also some more challenges there. So right now, we have monorepo. We have all the code there together. We know and can share all the code that we need between the client apps. But as we compose it, there's always a host app, and it has the libraries inside it. And we have some shared utility services like error monitoring, telemetry, or internationalization. We want to share configuration. So, for example, the polls library talks with the same API as Q&A library. And we had to approach all of this. And in the end, what we chose was that we aimed to have well-defined boundaries around the libraries and the components with very clearly defined APIs. So at the initialization time, all these parts are configured and can be easily shared from the host app. So does this approach work for everyone? There need to be some trade-offs. Also on technology end, but also on the UI end. Like our aim was to have one implementation of polling, of Q&A, of event management, and reuse it across totally different apps. You have narrow sidebar somewhere at the side of a video conference tool. Then you have whole width of the browser, and you can do different things there, obviously. And we had to like find some middle ground of things that like the technology sacrifices would be like, okay, we need to share the code somehow, and it has its challenges. And the UI trade-offs would be that, okay, a designer that works on the standalone Slido would like to have a slightly different UI or UX, for example, in how the polls are run and managed. And the designer that works on the sidebar would like to have something else. So now they also need to align, and what we aim for is to ideally have like one implementation that is responsive. And of course, there are some differences. We have two different layouts for wide and narrow screens that we can use. And we try to keep the differences at the UI level. So we still have the advantage of having the core of the libraries and all the domain logic together, and have only one implementation of that. And yeah, this was all possible by the well-defined boundaries that we decided that what should talk with what and how. And this nicely guides you. And as one of my colleagues used to say, when we are thinking about something, it's like, okay, let's implement it, and the code will talk to us. So this happens here. And yes, next part I want to talk about. There's all this code. And you want to be confident that when you change something, you don't break something. Because we have a lot of share code. So you change something in a UI library, you change it in maybe 5 client apps. So how many of you used to test frontend? You can do offline poll with raising hands. So a few people are. And actually this was the state in Slido as well. Like 2 or 3 years ago, we had very few tests on frontend. Then we came up with this architecture of the WebEx sidebar that basically it's so easily testable that you don't want to miss out on that. And basically, what we did was some adaptation of model view controller architecture, and we try to have it really contained. That all the business logic needs to live in here. So we aim to not have any business logic, or ideally no no logic at all, which is not always possible, in the UI layer. So we have a bunch of models that keep state, and they are basically dummy. They shouldn't do anything. They shouldn't have business logic inside them. Just hold the actual state of the application so the UI layer can present it to people. And everything we want to keep at the controller layer. So all the actions that the UI layer does are done via invoking the controller methods. Controller changes models. Controller talks with the external dependencies, etc. Of course, it's more fine-grained than this, and there are some more services in between here. But as a simplification, basically, we want to have it like this. And when we are in this state, that the UI layer is only presenting the state of the app, we basically have an app that we can instantiate as a headless app. So basically, a front-end app that you can run from your command line and interact with it as a user would, because the command line would be only another presentation of the data. What this allowed us to do. So in this case, we can easily replace the UI layer by test layer. So now we can write fairly simple tests that don't need to parse HTML and look at the UI, and they can thoroughly test lots of things. So they can look at the state as the view layer does. They can interact with the app as the view layer does. And yeah, we can also easily replace the dependencies, the external dependencies, with mocked ones. Because what we aim for as well is that the initialization of such headless app is as explicit as it can be. So that's why I previously also mentioned that basically it's a TypeScript app, because we deliberately don't want to be tied to, for example, React and its mechanisms. And then it allows us to call the initialization in tests easily and give it mocked dependencies that we want without any special hassle around that. Also, what we can do is we can test the UI layer as well. So basically, we can do all the standard types of tests as well, but we aim to have most of those previous ones. So basically, the features of this architecture that we chose is that we want to have it like headless first, and with UI layer that feels almost optional there. We want to be able to have easily swap the external dependencies, and this enables us to write fast and effective headless tests that are reliable. And I mentioned we started this architecture as kind of an experiment with the WebEx integration. Then we gradually started working with this architecture also in other client apps. And some of them are partially like this, partially not, because it's also there's a lot of legacy code we try to gradually improve. But the integrations that we have for presentation tools, for video conferencing tools, they basically use this architecture. So testing should be truly easy, also on front end. And then it's also fun. What could be next? We could still take this further. we are, for example, embedding the participant mode in various integrations, as we did before with iframes. So we could create some modular version of the participant experience as well. There are still some client apps that are not in monorepo and could be, would benefit from that. We have this host mode app on web that's mostly Angular, or it's Angular wrapper, where parts of it via module federation use the new components. So we could gradually rework this app as well. Okay, so to sum up what I've been talking about, we have monorepo, which brings us actually good developer experience and helps a lot. We have dedicated developer experience team, which is a huge help for the team of our size and takes care of the tooling. We have shared UI libraries for consistent UI across the products. We have shared modules or shared libraries with the core features. We use module federation, and what we aim for is to have architecture testable with ease. And yeah, that's it from my end. Thank you for pozornosť.
Okay, thank you very much for your valuable lessons. Okay, we have some questions here, so I will start to go through them, and maybe Jozef, you can jump down so you can see them as well. Okay, so the first one is, how is your deployment process, like tools, lessons learned in the monorepo setup? Like a lot of people were asking about the monorepo thing, so maybe if you can touch that.
Yes. So basically, as I mentioned, the monorepo uses the Annex for building the monorepo tooling around it. We are using GitHub and GitHub Actions for our CI/CD pipelines, and we are using, besides the tests I was mentioning, also end-to-end tests in Playwright. So that's also part of the setup that is run default in the pipelines. And yeah, maybe if who asked the question can elaborate a bit more as well. Okay. Okay. So.
The question was if you made some mistakes. No mistakes.
We don't do mistakes. I mean, it was a process, and it's still not perfect. And yeah, when monorepo started, I remember that since we have so many apps there, we need to carefully configure like what gets deployed when, and Annex takes care of that, but it also needs to be configured well. And we were many times in situations that, for example, someone changed something completely unrelated, which deployed a version I didn't want of app that I owned. So we have to iron out such things. Also, with all the apps running there and running all the tests, all the end-to-end tests, the pipelines were not stable and were lots of times failing and making the deployment slow and frustrating. So there were things like this. Also, the process was manual in the beginning, and over the time, the release is done like I type yarn release, and that's it. And it does like tons of things, and it works nice. Thanks to the team. So. That was kind of a middle ground. There was a point in time where we had all the apps deployed only via Kubernetes, but yeah, then we abandoned that. But some of the apps that we have, we still use Kubernetes for that, and we take advantage of. Okay, we need rollback. We just switch the container for older one, and that's it.
Perfect. A lot of people is interested in what is your tech stack actually. You mentioned some technologies already, but if you can have a comprehensive.
From PHP, we have still one tool that's in PHP, but mostly it's JavaScript, TypeScript, and yeah, I was mentioning we have React in some apps as the UI layer. In others, we have Angular. So basically, this is most of it. And then there are some specialties in .NET, like integration with PowerPoint, etc. So, but mostly it's TypeScript, I would say.
Are you in transition from some technology to some other, or no?
Not really.
Keep all of them.
I mean, they all have either their place where they are, or it would be too expensive to overwrite it and wouldn't make too much sense. But as I was mentioning, the host app, which is in Angular, and the new things are in React, it would be nice to have it aligned, but I doubt we'll ever get there.
Okay, how big is your dev team at Slido?
Good question. Around 40 people, Yoshi, is that right? 50? I mean the devs only.
50 people for developers, but our dev teams include product managers, user research, graphics, and that's 120 people.
Okay, so 50 people developers, and when we combine all the people around it, like designers, etc., over 100, 120.
Okay, there are two more questions regarding monorepo. Maybe we can merge them together. What are the drawbacks of using monorepo from your experience, or what's your thoughts on debate monorepo versus Git submodules, or using some kind of packages or that kind of approach?
Yeah, the drawbacks. What is most or was most annoying for me, now I kind of got used to living with it, and it got improved a lot as well, is that someone can deploy changes in application that you own and you don't know about it. Because there's some shared config that's included somewhere in your app, but it's not that important at all. And it might cause issues. And this is maybe not drawback of monorepo, maybe yes, but also when there's a lot of happening in the pipeline, so there are a lot of apps in the monorepo that are being deployed, it can become quite laggy sometimes. So that's frustrating as well. And another thing that comes to my mind regarding versioning, it's not always clear what was the previous version of your app deployed, because maybe you deployed at version 10 and your next version is 27, and those 11 in between, 16 in between, were something else. So doing a rollback can be sometimes tricky. But that's why we have all the tooling around it, so we don't need to. The drawbacks we are trying to solve with the tooling, I would put it this way.
Thank you. Maybe last question. How did the Cisco acquisition affect your day-to-day life, if at all?
Well,
have you not noticed any change?
Definitely some, yes. There are some formal trainings we need to do, etc. But of course, we have some priorities that come from Cisco as the higher entity above us. But most of our freedom in the developer teams we could keep. So there was not like really nothing big that would affect us. Even we could keep all our tools, also those that maybe were not common in Cisco, but our CTO managed to push it through, so we can keep them. So yeah, the daily dev to dev life is not that much worse after acquisition.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think that wraps up the Q&A session. So thank you again for your talk and for your answers. Big round of applause, Jozef.